Good morning, everybody. I am the Cynic. One thing that's been bothering me for a long time about the anti-feminist community as a whole was the constant assertion of moral edicts being used to contradict biological ideas discussed within the MGTOW community. If you're a MGTOW, you know what I'm talking about. The ideological lens of morality and seeing everything through this lens, lest you fall prey to the same as the feminist smear. As if the Darwinian process, the forces that shaped the conditions and bred the Homo sapien animal into what we are today, gave an honest husky fuck about the morals and ethics agreed upon thousands of years down the line. Outside of civilization, especially the Western civilization we have today, life didn't care about morality. It was survival of the most adaptable, those who were able to survive and possess the genes sought after by the females of the species. Nature and survival doesn't favor the most moral predator. After all, what kind of survival probability would a lion have who failed to chase down and eat a gazelle because of the pain and death it caused? Or the apes whose habitat didn't bear food and wouldn't dare to invade another tribe's land due to the moral implications and conflicts? To MGTOW, this is common sense, but bring it up to the modern-day person who's been bombarded with objective moral lessons of inherent goodness since their early toddler years, and shamed should they ever question such moral beliefs as anything but a solemn and indisputable truth. Contemplating the world outside of this moralistic lens is akin to heresy and hatred. This, I believe, is where most people get stuck on the ideas of hypergamy and gynocentrism. I also must admit that MGTOW itself hasn't done much in the way of making the truths any less than sounding bigoted and misogynistic ourselves. Stardust, Barbarossa, Sandman, we've all used these truths to impose shame and blame onto women in some way, shape, or form, calling women hypergamous whores, lambasting society's gynocentrism, and its forgiveness for the growing slut culture, and so on and so forth. Rightfully so or not is irrelevant. As the saying goes, most arguments are caused 90% of the time by tone. Taking this into consideration, it's really no wonder why anti-feminists are so hesitant to explore gynocentrism and the other ideas that men going their own way have presented. The Western world considers itself a moral one, not on the basis of consequentialism and fact, but upon virtue ethics and what is explained well, while also cushioning feelings. Ethics of egalitarianism and equality, for no real reason other than that's what's sounding nice and uplifts the feels. Taking into account the subject matter, MGTOW does have a stronger appeal to the disenfranchised man, more so than the average everyday anti-fem who considers themselves rationalists. Being realistic, what is considered the moral quote-unquote way to act in Western society? Being grateful, reciprocating favors, maintaining a respectful tone and attitude, disregarding generalities, conflating hasty and valid generalizations, anti-racism, anti-sexism, and so on and so forth. The concept of hypergamy in and of itself goes against most people's definition of morality. Marrying up is considered by many to be gold-digging or looking for a better deal, which it kind of is. But that was the point of morality, to keep the females of the population in check for the betterment of civilization. Of course, the issue is much more nuanced than that. Hypergamy in and of itself isn't an issue. Matter of fact, it's the drive for betterment on the part of women that has helped shape the human ape into being the dominant and superior creature we are today, procreating with the best of years gone past to produce the best and most fit offspring. Where the issue lies in hypergamy versus long-term commitment is in a moralistic sense. Women have not evolved to pair bond exclusively with one man long-term, and neither were men to a single woman. However, with the ever-growing morality needed to maintain society, women's nature needed to be regulated, as did men's. And so the social construct of monogamy was introduced, and the moral idea that monogamy and exclusivity within that union was to be maintained came to be, with infidelity to be seen as a sin and harlotry. However, biology has and will continue to conflict with the moral standpoint. Women and men seeking out sexual partners outside of the union, leading to cuckoldry and unintentional rearing of another man's offspring. The biological imperatives of hypergamy, while a choice to act upon, is not a choice to have, and the way to get rid of it is not to beat or punish it out of women. What would need to be done is to find the few women and men, if any of either exists, who do not hold this biological imperative and only allow them to breed, while the rest of us die off without copulation, taking the seeds of hypergamy with us to the grave. And men, don't kid yourself into thinking that if you had a female child, using whatever mechanism you had to do so that lacked a human female, that she wouldn't have the inclination of hypergamy as well. It is not a learned behavior, it is a biological factor, one that would need to be bred out of the human animal and hoped never to return, which is likely even if the most narwhaled unicorn society were to transpire. That's just the nature of the human animal, as well as the nature of all animals in general. It used to be, and in some regards still is, our best bet for producing a suitable offspring. Though, with the social construct of morality, thanks to the neo-mammalian brains, the concept of hypergamy counteracts to social interest of the collective. The standards that society has set forth, while restrictive, are what made civilization possible. Should these restrictions be relieved, even in the slow but continued fashion that they are today, the destruction of civilization is all but inevitable. Freedom is nice, but in order to live alongside one or multiple human beings, it must be regulated. Now, the point of this video is actually in response to both Teal Deer and Stardusk, and their questioning on why anti-feminists were so hard-pressed to question why feminism had become such a pervasive force in Western societies. It's pretty undeniable that there is an undercurrent and sometimes overcurrent of misogyny within the MGTOW community. Rightfully so? Maybe. But that's an irrelevant detail to most anti-feminists. Most anti-fems are egalitarian, decrying feminism as the destructive and sexist movement that it is, in its words against men, and applying the principles that feminism espouses onto MGTOW for our equally divisive rhetoric. However, while feminist rhetoric is divisive on a moralistic and superficial level that's bathed in false information and non-statements, MGTOW's rhetoric is only morally discouraging, but closer to factual truth, at least at the crux of the issue anyway. Our ideas are closer to reality, but attack the moral fabric of what makes society possible. The idea that women are not hypergamous, but the ones who initiate and desire long-term commitment in the first place, will force most anybody into a state of cognitive dissonance. And that is why the anti-feminists have such a difficult time in discussing the issues of hypergamy and gynocentrism, because the moralistic equality and anti-sexism of society run counter to the very existence of these imperatives. Despite all the evidence to support MGTOW's stance against their own, the anti-feminists would need to consider the idea that women are inherently immoral by their own standards. Where gynocentrism plays into this is the restrictions it's placed onto females to regulate them while simultaneously giving women favor in the world. Feminists conflate lack of freedom with lack of care. But we know that through the death of men to protect women, men making the ultimate sacrifices for them, that this protection and preference isn't out of a place of malice or quote-unquote oppression, but a subconscious knowledge that women are the less disposable sex, by virtue of them being the ones who castrate the babies of our species. And the fact of the matter is that, with the advancement in medicine, mortality rates, and protection, this is no longer the case. Our biology hasn't caught up with the fact of life, and until it does, if ever, the unconscious need to protect and care for women will continue to be the primary motivator, with all moral justifications to be used for it upon convenience. To paraphrase, anti-feminists are egalitarians who see the world through the moral lens. And so long as MGTOW's ideas are laced with casting women in an immoral light, the anti-fem crowd will never consider the ideas as much more than the blatherings of internet misogynists looking to condemn the female sex as a whole for the actions, quote-unquote, of feminists. Facts and logics only apply as far as ethics and tone will allow with these people, which is why I don't foresee MGTOW gaining too much steam with anyone aside from the growing group of disenfranchised men. They like the tone, they like the rhetoric, and they like the condemnation. But the men who haven't been burned, the men who casually look around trying to figure things out, the normal, average, everyday anti-fems who think feminism is stupid, even if displayed with the calm and cool of Barbar or Teal Deer or even Stardusk, they will still be turned off by the presentation of half the human population being displayed as inherently immoral by their very nature, regardless of how truthful that presentation may be. Look, I don't say this to tone police, I don't say this to bring more men into MGTOW or whatever. I'm just explaining the fact of the matter. And the fact of the matter is that so long as MGTOW videos and blogs contain passive and overt condemnations on women for their hypergamy and society's disposability of men, the majority of males will see our words through the moralistic lens of equality and dismiss us as nothing more than hateful man-children. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. I have no say in that regard. I am the Cynic, everybody. Have a nice day.